Hi everyone, my name is Latimer and I'm currently an occupational therapy student at Boston University completing my doctoral capstone project on yoga for Parkinson's disease. I'm very excited to get started with our class today, and I'm going to be going over some safety recommendations and our setup for the class. So first things first, before you start class today, make sure that it's an appropriate time of the day for you to exercise. So that means that you are well rested and you've taken your medication for the day to manage your symptoms. Be sure to listen to your body throughout class, and if you feel any pain or discomfort in any poses, please stop where you are and get out of the pose or try a different variation that I will show throughout the class. And if the pain continues, consult your doctor or physiotherapist for some other options. As far as our setup for class, you will need a yoga mat or just a soft, comfortable surface for you to practice on. Some of the class will be in a chair, some of the class will be on the floor. So you want it to be squishy and comfortable enough for your knees and your joints as you get down on the ground. You will need at least one chair for class today, preferably a chair without arms, but if you only have a chair with arms, that will work perfectly fine. You will want a water bottle with you, and I encourage practicing next to a wall. As you can see, I will be doing. Throughout class, I'll be showing how we can use the wall for some of these exercises. If you don't have a wall that is available, I recommend a sturdy table or a second chair. And if you know that you don't want to get on the floor today, you'll want a second chair to do some of the postures seated using the other chair instead of getting on the floor. Some other equipment that you might use, props to help increase comfort in your practice, are yoga blocks. I have two. If you don't have a yoga block, you can use a book or stack of books to bring the ground closer to you. You could use a water bottle like what I have, or even a second chair to use as a yoga block and bring the ground closer to you. I will also be using a strap throughout our class today. This is what my yoga strap looks like. If you don't have a strap, you can use a bathrobe tie, which is what I have here, or even a belt. And lastly, I have a blanket, a yoga blanket, but you can use any blanket for while we get on the floor, especially for our knees if you've had any past knee injuries. Be sure to modify physical postures as needed today, especially balancing postures. If you know that you're feeling a little bit off today, take things easy and do what feels right. I recommend practicing barefoot, but if you feel more comfortable, you can have non-slip socks or non-slip shoes on too. And lastly, if you have a mirror in front of you, that may be helpful for some visual feedback to make adjustments as needed, but it's not necessary for the class. Lastly, for safety, please make sure that there is another adult at your residence, and if you are alone, just make sure that there's somebody you could call and contact in case anything happens. And I even encourage you to have your loved ones join these classes with you to add in that social component and that social support for these virtual classes. Thank you so much, and let's get started. All right, everyone, so we're going to get started with class today. We can get started in a comfortable seat in our chair, or if you'd like, we can try to sit in hero's pose on the floor. I recommend sitting on one or two blocks. It's long or small height on top of each other. And we're coming to sit on top of the knees, like so, right on top of our blocks. You can always roll up a blanket underneath as well and put it underneath. And this is stretching the top of the legs. If you want to stretch the feet too even, you can tuck the toes. This might not last very long since we're not used to stretching the feet this way. But finding a comfortable position here, sitting up nice and tall, rolling the shoulders back and down. Whether we're on the floor or on our chair, just making any last adjustments until we can settle here. allowing the eyes to fall closed, or maybe just softly bringing the gaze down towards the floor. Noticing the breath flowing in and out of the body, not trying to change it in any way, just noticing its natural rhythm. Maybe scanning the body here to notice how we feel right now, right in this moment. And noticing what we say to ourselves. How can we approach this practice with kindness, courage, honesty, and acceptance? Acceptance to empower ourselves, to push ourselves where we can. Also, acceptance of being where we are right now. And being honest with ourselves and not pushing ourselves too far. Three more breaths here. And from here, we're going to come into our 3 Om chants. You have the options to keep the arms on the thighs, or you can inhale, reaching out and up, and exhaling to Om on the way down, stretching to both sides of the room, spreading all 10 fingers. We're going to do 3 together as a class. Big inhale in through the nose. Two more. Big breath in. Think of projecting, being loud to everybody in the room. Last one, make it our best one, projecting from the diaphragm. Coming back to the natural breath here. Meeting back through center, hands come on the thighs this time, and this time we'll come into our hip circles. So with a wide stance, we're going to drop the chest towards the left knee, through center, and back up and around. Noticing how the weight shifts into the feet. Just being curious with each movement as we start to awaken the body. Switching directions of this circle. And with the theme of acceptance, especially during a strength class, just encouraging ourselves to bring this curiosity with the rest of our movements throughout class today. Exploring our limitations and embracing where we are. Meeting back through center here. We can bring the feet back together. We're going to start to warm up the upper body here. So arms go out in front of us, big hands. We're going to open and close for 20 seconds. So exaggerating at the beginning, spreading our 10 fingers as wide as we can. You can pick up the pace when you're ready. We have 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shaking it out if you need to. This time on our inhale, we're going to inhale both arms up together. We're going to have our palms facing each other, and we're going to do puppet hands talking towards each other. If it's tough on the shoulders, you can always work on this same hand exercise right in front of us. Opening and closing our puppet hands. Powerfully pressing the thumb against all of our fingers. We've got 10, 9. I feel it in my forearms. Keep going. Breathe. 4, 3, 2, 1. Whew. Shake out the wrists here. We're going to come into some arm circles. So starting to warm up the shoulders. This is really great for posture. So arms come out to a T here. We're going to start with small circles going backwards. Reaching to both sides of the room through your fingertips. Relaxing the shoulders back and down away from the ears. We're going to start to make these circles a little bit bigger. We're slowly growing with each circle until we find ourselves starting to make big circles. For 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Shake out the shoulders, shake out the arms. One more round going forward this time. Finding any last minute movements or adjustments before we go to our last round of our wrist and our arm warm up. So arms come out to a T again, starting going forward this time with little circles. And still thinking about our posture here. So sitting up nice and tall, pressing the belly button towards the front of the mat. And breathing. Starting to make these arm circles a little bit bigger. Till we find ourselves in big arm circles for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Shaking out the arms and the legs. We did it. And from here, if we're still in our standing mountain pose, we're going to come to sit on the chair. We're going to come into our chair series, and I've introduced the block in the past before. You can always put the block in between the thighs. Since this is a strength class, I do recommend having a block in between the thighs to help remind your quads and your hips to squeeze towards the midline as we come into this chair flow. So we can always start with our hands on the edge of the seat if needed. We're going to inhale, start to shift the weight forward into the feet, maybe so much so that the seat can hover above the mat. Again, what happens is sometimes we arch in our lower back, so thinking of drawing the belly button in to tuck our hips underneath us. Weight is in the back of the heels. And maybe we're just shifting between hovering and coming down. Squeezing that block with our legs, feeling the legs start to warm up and activate. Maybe we'd like to try to powerfully come all the way up to stand. Sending the hips back, fighting gravity on our way down, using the resistance of gravity to help strengthen the legs. And sometimes moving slower does not mean easier. So we're either hovering or we're coming all the way up to stand, going as slow as we can on the way down, feeling every micro movement in the feet and the ankles, all the way up the legs, through the hips. And just being curious. If you've been coming to stand, this time on our way down, I challenge you to try and hold your chair just an inch or two above the seat. If you come down, that's perfectly fine. We're drawing the belly button in, gaze is forward. And just breathe. Noticing where we're hanging on to tension in the face and the jaw. And I know this is challenging, maybe even finding a smile here in these challenging points. And what are we saying to ourselves? One more breath. On our next exhale, sending the hips back in the seat. We can shake out the legs if we need to after that one. We've got one more to come to stand. So hands are wherever comfortable, inhaling, shifting forward into the feet, and powerfully pressing up to stand, squeezing the kneecaps, squeezing the block here. Tadasana, mountain pose. So from our mountain pose, we're going to come into a warrior 3 pose, which is a balancing pose. And we're also going to add a strengthening component to it. So this is really where listening to ourselves comes in. We're going to be using our chair for our balance. So you can still make sure that you're close to a wall if you're worried. And try and find that sweet spot, that happy medium between getting out of our comfort zone and strengthening and working on our balance, especially if there is a fear of falling. Know that you are in a safe spot, a safe environment to practice some of these things and strengthen that balance in your body, but also strengthen that muscle in your mind that tells you, I don't know if I can do this, that fear, anxiety, doubt. We're strengthening that muscle to say, no, I can do this. But finding that balance between ease and effort. Before we get into a warrior 3, I want you all to watch me. This is what the final expression is going to look like. Hands are on the chair, one foot is down, and we are lifting one leg back behind us, keeping this hip pointed towards the floor. So before we come into it, I want us to imagine first. You don't have to close the eyes, especially while we're standing. Please don't. But just soften the gaze, almost like we're meditating. And imagine exactly each step, what it's going to feel like. So we're not doing anything right now. We are just imagining ourselves. We are going to be placing the hands on the seat, reaching that right leg or whichever leg back behind us. And we're going to be in one long line energetically, strengthening the back body because we're lifting the chest, strengthening the standing leg. And noticing in our imagination all the air and space around us. What muscles are we engaging? If we lose our balance, what way will we step or fall? How can we bring ourselves back to center? And starting to come into it here, we're going to go ahead and bring both hands onto the seat of the chair and stepping both feet back as much as feels appropriate. We want our feet to be directly underneath the hips. So you know you've stepped too far back if you notice your hips go straight to the floor and you notice you haven't stepped far back enough. If your hips are reaching back behind your ankles. So finding that sweet spot. And coming back to what we imagined how this was going to feel as we start to lift the right leg back behind us, flexing the foot. Notice what muscles we're activating. Observe in the body where we're maybe shaking, any micro movements in the ankles and in the feet, in the arms. And we are here. This is our warrior 3. So we can hold our warrior 3 if we'd like. We can always bend the knee to have a shorter lever if we need to as well. And we're going to hold at the end, but for now, if you'd like to find some leg lifts, we're going to tap the right toes down and inhaling to lift. Exhaling to tap and inhaling to lift. Keeping that right hip pointed towards the mat here. Making sure we're breathing. How different does this feel compared to what you imagined? Next time we inhale, that right foot comes back. Maybe we play with the balance a little bit here. Maybe we lift one arm at a time. Maybe we lift both arms. Hands come back down to the seat. Feet step together, shaking out the legs, shaking out the arms. Finding whatever we need here until we switch sides. And so just taking a quick moment here, we know what it felt like on the right side. How is it going to feel like on the left? What exactly are we going to do? Where are we going to stretch and lengthen? What muscles are we activating? And let's do it. So both hands come down to the seat. Feet are under the hips. And when we're ready, we'll inhale the left leg behind us this time. Left hip is pointing down towards the mat. Maybe we stay here. Again, you always have the option to bend the knee. Maybe we find our toe taps. Inhaling to lift and exhaling to lower. And the next time we inhale our left leg back behind us, we'll hold here, drawing the belly button in. We can always have the hands on the seats. We can play around with having one hand at a time on the seat, or maybe play around with hands to heart center, airplane wings. Wherever we're at, hands come to seat, feet come together. Shaking out the legs here, coming all the way onto our backs. So feel free to move your blanket underneath your head here. And settling on our backs, we can inhale both knees into the chest, And start to draw circles with the knees, massaging the low back. Switching the directions of this circle. And both feet come to plant on the ground. Arms are at our sides, palms down. We can bring a block in between the thighs, just like we did in our chair and mountain pose. We're going to come into a bridge pose. So pressing in through the feet and the hands to lift the hips, squeezing the blocks or the block. And exhaling, releasing down. Inhaling the knees into the chest one more time. Our feet go as wide as the mat here, and we're just going to start to windshield wipe the knees from side to side. When we're ready, legs go long and with the feet wide. Arms are a couple feet away from our body. Palms up. And allow the body to settle here. Our final relaxation or shavasana. The eyes can draw closed, or maybe we soften the gaze. Coming back to the breath. Coming back to that intention we set at the beginning of our practice. The acceptance. Exploring. Expanding. Our own limitations. But also accepting them. So being curious with ourselves. To get out of our comfort zone. Challenge ourselves. But also be honest. And accepting where we are today, right now in this moment, accepting our limitations. And while we practice that in our yoga class today, where could we practice this in our daily lives? Taking a few more deep breaths here. And if you have more time at home, I recommend spending 5 to 10 more minutes in this Shavasana pose. Otherwise, if you're coming out with me, we'll start to wiggle the toes and fingers, rock the head from side to side. We'll go ahead and inhale, one arm up overhead, feet come onto the mat, bending the knees. And on our exhale, we'll roll over to whatever side we reached our arm up to come into a fetal position, using that arm as the pillow. And from here, we'll use the top hand to slowly press ourselves up to a comfortable seat here. Taking a moment to thank ourselves for carving the time out of our day for our yoga practice. and taking the time to honor our bodies for all it allowed us to do throughout this practice today. The light within me honors the light within each of you. Namaste.